Who will be the first to die and how long until that button is pushed? Death penalty advocates in Ohio are having a hard time answering those questions, with cases mired in appeals and the system unable to live up to its own requirements. Right now, there are 171 dead men waiting on Ohio's death row, and for every one of them, a victim, with a family waiting for answers.
Now, I knew that Bellingham. He was a good friend of mine. The only reason that man is dead because he stayed in there so long because they want to cut off water and turn off electricity.
When rioting Lucasville inmates tossed the body of guard Robert Bellingham into the prison yard, it began a life of grief and retribution for his parents.
When they went as far as killing people, they've lost every human right they've ever deserved to have.
Our legal system leans more towards the criminal than it does towards your victims.
Eldon and Wanda Bellingham have become outspoken advocates of victims' rights, lobbying for mandatory death sentences for any inmate who takes the life of a guard, traveling 32,000 miles and spending $4,000 to attend all 5 trials for their son's killers.
We had no rights. You couldn't talk to anybody. You sat there. So I know that the last judge asked me, said, "Why are you there every day?" We just felt that the jury needed to know that Bob has family that loves him and that we're not going to let it go.
So I still get angry and upset, and I miss him.
If I look back on what I did, Colleen, and said there's one thing that I would have done differently, I think I should have taken time to talk to the victims' families.
Dick Celeste concedes he ignored the legitimate pain and rage of victims and their families when he commuted 8 death row sentences in the final days of his administration. His zeal to open the capital punishment debate came at a high cost.
I think that those of us who oppose the death penalty really need to be clear in acknowledging both the horror of the crimes that have been committed and the pain that the victims of those crimes, their families, feel in the process. And nothing that I've done should suggest that I don't care about that. I really do, and I know that I hurt people.
But Celeste is not backing down from his decision, which was supported by the state public defender and the Catholic Bishops' Conference.
Even when society needs to say some things like, we don't like what you're doing and we don't think you're remorseful, it's got to be churches and groups that say, well, we're not going to give up on you, though, and we don't think that anybody else should. And we need to bring you to a point that says you need to figure out that what you did was very, very wrong.
And of course, it's not difficult to find a death row inmate who now claims he sees the error of his ways.
Do you think very much about the victim in your case? How often do you think about Mr. Self?
Every day in my life. I pray for him every day, and I pray for a lot of things.
Robert Van Hook slit the throat of a Cincinnati man, later robbing him and mutilating the body. Keith Hennis robbed and murdered a man in Columbus's Short North, but he says the forgotten victims of his crimes are his own sons.
I really, I don't know what to say to him. Your dad's on death row. I'm sorry, but I'll never get to hold you or see you in your first school play or in sports or be there when you have problems. I have no idea what to say to him and wish there's any way possible to keep him from having to face it later when it happens.
I come from a good family, had a good job, was a heavy equipment operator, got hurt at work. They put me in the hospital, lots of pain pills, got addicted to them. Then they stopped working and somebody said, well, here, try this. And I tried cocaine. And it was like a runaway roller coaster.
Fred Treesh and 2 friends went on a multi-state crime spree, smoking $2,000 worth of crack a day, robbing banks and stores, and shooting anyone who got in their way, including a 70-year-old security guard near Cleveland. But he also considers his 14-year-old daughter to be his forgotten victim.
We're sitting closer right now than me and my family will ever get to sit. We talk on the phone, we talk through class. You're able to reach over and put a microphone on me. My mom can't touch my hand. My daughter can't touch my hand, hug me. And that's in reality. You're sitting closer right now than we ever would, or ever will, probably.
What I think we have to focus on is where are our sympathies? Where should they go with the killer, or should they go with his victims, the people he's maimed? There are people walking around now that he's shot. There's a person walking around now that he's shot in the face, permanent scarring, destroyed his life. We have at least 2 men dead because of him. What about their families? What about these people? That's where our sympathy should lie, not for trash like Trish.
I don't see how you could ever forget losing someone, you know, or how you could ever be happy that somebody else died because they took, you know, your son or daughter's life.
And yet there are those who will say, I will have peace of mind, I will have closure if I know my son or daughter's killer has been executed.
I don't really believe that. I really don't. Because I've seen those people on TV, and after the person has been executed that they're talking about, they still have the same face, you know, the same face of sadness and the same look in their eyes as they did before the guy got killed.
I won't be satisfied. I'll at least see one of them men burn. If I can be there to witness, I'll be tickled to death.
Would you go and witness?
Oh, yes. Yes, I'd push the button. I actually would. I'd be tickled to death to push the button.
The families of murder victims will be invited to watch the executions. The prison worker who pushes the button will volunteer for that job, and the Corrections Department is considering a system where there would be 3 different buttons with no one knowing who exactly executes the prisoner. At 11, for the very first time, we take a camera inside a death row cell where an inmate is living, and we'll take a closer look at the failings of the judicial system.
Very powerful story there, Colleen. We'll be right back.